Tiny Constant Worlds is a meta-disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I'm Kat, she, her. We did it, and I just had to redo this.
I'm Tara, they, them, and I didn't want to do it the first time, and now we're here having to do it again.
It's deja vu. It's the worst deja vu. We finished reading it. You can hear we're very tired. You know what? We're going to be very upfront and honest with you. First of all, we are recording this just before Taryn leaves. Like, days before Taryn leaves for Switzerland.
Yeah,
And
like we've made jokes about me being in Switzerland, and when you hear some of these, I'm there. But
yeah.
But we, as we've talked about, we pre-record, and I'm not physically there yet.
Yeah.
So
we are kind of batch recording, and that does mean that we had to read a lot of it very fast. Also, we made the mistake of watching Quiet on Set last night. And now we're recording this. I actually wrote the script for this episode while we were watching it.
yeah, that was a choice.
I had to finish it so we could record.
No, I know, but
This is... We never want to bring our lobsters anything less than the best, but this is not going to be the best, and I'm so sorry.
no.
But by this point, you know what? Our episode will be out of Kids on Bikes. Go listen to that instead.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Kids on Bikes is fun. That's enjoyable.
It is not enjoyable.
No.
So we finished it, and it is a triggering book, and we got to the most triggering part. This is the section with the controversial scene amongst the children. If you need to step out, please step out. We will not be offended. That Kids on Bikes episode, it's great.
Yeah, that one's fun.
You know, we had a good time playing it. There will be more Kids on Bikes to come.
I don't want to say this, but, you know, we also did The Mist. You could go back to that.
Yeah. Yep. So, if you gotta bow out of this episode, that's okay. We won't be offended. Not at all. Here's the trigger warnings for this part of the... Well, for this book, for this episode, and definitely for this part of the book. All right. Child death, racial slurs, racism, death, bullying, child abuse, sexual content, murder, violence, domestic abuse, homophobia, gore, suicide, fat phobia, animal cruelty, animal death, anti-Semitism, misogyny, infidelity, pedophilia, sexual assault, and fuck, so much more. You know what? Not understanding trauma. Not understanding trauma is also, frankly, should be here.
I didn't read this part. There's been a lot of parts that I've skipped out on. I had enough of it by this point. I really tried to be a trooper through this one. And it finally got to a point where I realized I was just firmly dreading having to go any further. And that I think it was legitimately having an effect on my mental health. I could go no further. I can't give enough props to Kat for actually making it all the way through.
I almost didn't.
That was part of how I knew I needed to stop. When Kat said that she'd almost noped out, I knew.
Even Rocket is upset.
I can't blame him. He's had to be there through all of it.
There will be a content warning inserted in post when I'm editing this, and I have the actual timestamps for you all when we get to the one part, if you decide to listen to the rest of the episode. So you can skip to where you feel good. But we'll start with chapter 21. Chapter 21 is safe enough. So it starts out from its perspective, which was pretty cool. It's actually pretty interesting in general. We got a nice lore drop. It is reflecting on the beginning of the universe, the turtle, and its situation. It's as in, like, its situation is possessive, belonging to it. And that situation is the one in which some children have managed to beat him. Or it. Managed to beat it. Because guess what we find out in here somewhere? That it is female.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Surprise that the evil one is female.
Right? And pregnant.
I wonder how supportive Stephen King was through his wife's pregnancies.
Right?
And how he viewed his pregnant wife. You know, maybe he was awesome. We're putting a lot out there because we hated this book. He might have been the best.
He might have been the best.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No.
Either way, some children are managing to beat it, and that it is limited because of the physics of our world, which require it to adhere to the rules of its shape. It also expresses a fear that it is not alone, but to its knowledge, the turtle is dead. The kids are still working their way through the sewers. Eddie is leading them because he essentially has a compass in his head, which I'm assuming is his shine. They have a finite number of matches to occasionally see in the dark and eventually come across Patrick Hochstadter's body. They keep moving forward, especially because, like, Henry is somewhere behind them. As adults, they also have limited matches and are once again following Eddie's mind compass. They once again come across Patrick's body because everything is just mirroring itself. Anywho, so its thoughts on the adults is that it has reduced their number from the talismanic power number of 7 to 5. 5 is also a powerful number, but not as powerful.
Is Eddie having a compass in his head? Is this adult Eddie that we're talking about?
Both Eddies.
Oh, okay.
Eddie got some, like, serious... Eddie got nerfed in the 2017 and 2019 movies because he's actually does quite a bit of shit.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, because if it was just adult Eddie, I was gonna ask if it was a shine or if it was a result of being a driver for a living. But it sounds more like he became a driver for a living because he has a compass in his head as a shine.
Yeah.
So
Bill even talks about, like, if he had gotten lost in a specific area, like, by himself, he'd have been terrified. But if Eddie was there, he would have felt good. Because Eddie just knows where to go. And occasionally that's why they have to, like, light the matches so that Eddie can kind of just, like, see a little bit.
yeah.
It's almost like a spurt. But otherwise, he's doing this in, like, super dark. And they're just, like, holding each other's hands so they follow along. And he is able to just navigate them through the dungeon that they're in. Because we're back to D&D.
This sounds very familiar. That also sounds like a D&D thing. I'm almost positive that's a thing that you can get in D&D.
Probably.
That's an elf thing. Always knowing where you are.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's
so.
an elf thing.
If it's not, it's a feat. But I think I know what one you're talking about. But yeah.
The dog in Eyes of the Dragon.
Oh,
Did the dog-
Frisky.
Yes, did Frisky not kind of have the same thing where, like, as long as Frisky could see or could smell,
I think it was like, yeah, I think so. Because,
she was like a special dog.
yeah. Yeah,
But I
think so.
I think this has come up before. I think this specific ability has come up more than just now.
Oh, I wouldn't be shocked. It feels like something, because, like, I mean, even without, like, a direct connection, just the way that it sounds like Roland travels.
Yeah.
Hey, how the fuck do you know where you're going, dude?
Well, that will come up.
Okay.
How he knows where to go. And it has to do with the turtle. That's why I keep talking about.
I loved the turtle.
yeah.
The turtle was the shining
There
star.
will be a turtle, there will be a bear, there will be the way that they are finding their way comes up. But first it's him following the man in black, and then other ways that they know where they're going come up. But
But do you want to talk about what happened in Tull?
do I want to ask what he did in Tull? Because he doesn't like to talk about
He
it.
doesn't like to talk about
He
it.
doesn't like to talk about anything. But don't you want to ask?
But he loves talking about himself.
No, he doesn't like to talk at all. But if you ask, don't you want to ask?
You need to give him an excuse.
Oh my god.
Motherfucker. Anywho, yeah, both Eddies have the mind compass. It is just a thing that he's just really good at doing, which I will say was something that I thought was... they did nerf him in the new movies, and I'm a little, like... I feel like a lot of the characters actually got nerfed, and it was to compensate for a problem that comes up later with the adult versions of them in this book. Because I will say, like, Eddie did more, Stan did more. They just did a lot more in the entire process here. And as much as I enjoyed Stan in the movies, partially because that actor's did a really good job.
Yeah.
The very brief time the adult one was in it, he did a good job too. I feel like he tried to nail some of those mannerisms that the kid had. Stan felt very like, why are you here? We just needed 7. Which is why, like, when he is not there as an adult, it's like, well, did you lose anything? Because Stan was not super useful in the movie because they took away the thing that he does, which is, like, it's silly, but his birds and his bird book. But it's because we never see it attack as a bird to any of them. So Stan's like, no, I believe in birds, and you're not a real bird. It was gone. There was no need to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Stan and Eddie, they do just so much more in this book than they did in the movies, and it's a bummer.
I wonder if it's because these are shines, and I wonder if it's because they also could be related to gunslinger things. Mm-hmm. And 2017 is when that Dark Tower movie came out, which I don't know that it's the same production company, and it's definitely a different director.
And we have like a fox, and you can't use the word mutant.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But also, if they're shines, that's very specific to The Shining and like the movie universe.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know when the Ewan McGregor movie came out.
Dr. Sleep
came out.
I want to say that was like 2019?
2019, maybe, yeah.
Because I remember renting it when we lived at the previous place.
Yeah.
And I don't think it had been out terribly long. I'm not sure.
When I worked at that theater, it was in the theaters.
Okay. So yeah, I think that, you know what? I will just look it up real quick. It was at least...
So it would have been the year of the sequel.
2019, yeah.
So we have the Idris Elba Dark Tower movie when the first It movie comes out, and then when the sequel comes out, we have Dr. Sleep coming out.
Yeah.
So you can't really relate too much to anything gunslingery, and you can't really relate anything too much to Shining.
Yeah.
You have to be really careful. So I think there's probably a lot of reasons that they made the choices that they made, but I wonder if that's some of the reasons they were doing that. Because otherwise it's going to make those movies look too related.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's valid.
Because I've been wondering why they didn't put in more with Bill's bike.
Yeah.
Especially since in the second movie, Stephen King is like at the shop and he sells him the bike back, but the bike doesn't feature in the first movie like at all.
Yeah.
So you don't really understand why he cares to go buy, like why we have this scene where he buys this bike back. And it is like pushing, like why do we care this much? And why is that his cameo?
Yeah.
Like, why does this matter? But when you read the book, it makes more sense. But that is so, like, gunslingery. And his relationship to it is so much like that.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
No, I think it's a valid point. It also explained that, like, the reason it likes to eat children is they're just a lot easier to feed off of because adults' fears are just so much more complicated. And you know what? Valid. That's why we're sitting here, both very low energy and probably a lot more, like, nihilistic than usual.
Yeah.
Either way, so it is in fact a dungeon crawl, in my opinion, and that continues. And they eventually run into a beholder. By that, I mean a giant eye with, like, little feelers, you know, like a fucking beholder, which first appeared in Greyhawk in 1975. So I see you, Stephen King. It's a beholder. Eddie is very badass. He believes that his aspirator sprays acid now, and they fight another bird, and Stan's knowledge comes in handy, because he knows birds. Mike even swoops in and has to, like, protect Eddie, like, from an attack, because there's just so much more happening, and Bill is not really doing anything. He's getting caught. And, like, Eddie even has this point where he channels, like, this, like, barbarian voice, and he just says, like, the most ridiculous things because Eddie has figured out that it is what they believe that's causing this.
He learned it from his mom, it sounds like. He learned that thing of, like, well, she believes that this works.
Exactly.
So it has made it work. I can now use this.
Yes. It's a shame that we didn't get some of this because I do feel like they made Eddie a lot, like, more just in the background. And I imagine it's because they hired Finn Wolfhard for Richie.
Yeah.
Richie got a much bigger role than I feel like Richie had in the book.
Oh, yeah.
I think they just swapped so much of Eddie's stuff over into Richie and over into Bev. I will be honest, I stopped really paying close attention. Like, I was enjoying this part of the book, but I was also just very ready to be done with this book. But eventually they'd find the door to its lair. Their mark on the door looks different to, like, all of them. Bill realizes the reason that Henry is actually still chasing them, because they can hear him, is because if their beliefs could stop its bullshit, Henry was a great backup plan because he's fucking real and he's ready to murder. Meanwhile, in 1985, on this day, the reliable chime of the church does not strike at 5 a.m. A bunch of the old timers in town all respond to this, even though I don't think they all realize why. But it's all people who have basically come real close to it in some capacity and taken part, or at least been aware of the mass, like, violence that occurred. They all seem to just, like, they, like, wake up randomly at 5 a.m. when the church bell doesn't ring. There is a storm brewing outside, and it's just really getting violent now. In the sewers, the adult losers are fighting it again, and they remember that it is female. And Stan is actually the one who figured that out, because, again, he was useful. It is also pregnant. Eddie is described as a gunslinger as he, like, pulls his aspirator back out as an adult. Bill gets caught in its deadlights, basically. And also, it should be mentioned that Audra is found down here. She is the one floating. If you have watched the 2017, I think it's in the 2017 movie where they have child Bev floating. That does not happen in the book. Audra, as an adult, is there, caught in the deadlights like that, floating. She is still alive, but she's, like, not present. Bill ends up getting caught in its gaze in both of the timelines, and he speaks with it and eventually the turtle in some capacity. And yes, the turtle is incredible. It had a tummy ache and puked up the universe.
Sorry.
That's what it said. It said to forgive it. It had a tummy ache. So we forgive the turtle.
Yeah, I mean, just barely. We didn't have to be here.
I mean, you can't control your tummy aches.
That's true.
In the fight with it, Child Bill channels his father's voice, and it helps him to beat it back, or at least scare it. Later, I believe it's adult... This is another one where we're back and forth between the two. Both sides are told incredibly similarly, so yeah, you're not missing much. I think it's adult Richie channels literally Mr. Nell, and he says a line, like, trying to back it off, and one of the things you see when you go back out to Derry, which is facing full-on apocalypse at this point, is Mr. Nell randomly says the line that Richie had said just to his wife out of nowhere. Drops his, like, coffee cup or something. And he doesn't know why he just said this thing, but Richie borrowed his voice.
I've been saying that Richie wasn't just doing voices. I've been saying it since day one.
Eddie, who already has a broken arm, this is adult Eddie, from his attack with Henry, he has a broken arm. He goes to fire off his aspirator of acid, gets his arm bit off, sort of like George, and he ends up bleeding out and dying, which we knew was going to happen. But that is different in the movies.
Yeah.
I will say he did a lot more prior to it, and the movies made him a lot more scared, or at least more, like, acting out that fear. I am sure Eddie was still scared even in the book, but he was pushing through it. So yeah, he gets his arm ripped off, says his last words to Richie, basically telling him not to call him Eds, then dies. Bev puts his head in her lap, and then she sits there for the rest of this. Oh, and by the way, Mike is still in the hospital. He's not here for this either. So now we have just Ben, Bill, and Richie trying to fight it. And it's not awesome. This was so fucking irritating. This is so fucking irritating. Anywho. So, as children, Bill, Bev, and Stan, like, in the final fight with the child final fight with it, Bill manages to get out of, like, where he is at, where he's, like, talking to it in this, like, other space, whatever space the deadlights exist in. While they like, seem to have defeated it, my argument is that the reason that it did not die when they were children was because Bill, Bev, and Stan doubted that it had been killed. The others, when Bill asked, is it dead? They all said yes. Yep. Yes, it is dead. Bill, Bev, and Stan, though, Bill would look at Bev and Stan, who showed doubt.
Yeah.
And I believe their asses are the ones that kept it alive.
Can't have any doubt with the magic.
Nope, you have to be emphatic and go, no, it is dead.
Yeah.
And all will be well. But these motherfuckers kept it alive. That is my argument. I'm sticking to it. So, like to the point, we're building everything around belief. Because when Bill gets caught in the deadlights as a child, like, Richie pulls him out of it, and he says, "We thought you were dead, man." And Bill thinks to himself, no, you may have thought I was dead, but you didn't believe I was dead, because if you had, I would have been.
Yeah.
They kept it alive, and it's their motherfucking fault that they had to come back as adults. They didn't do it right the first time. So they defeat it in both timelines. As adults, the mark on the door to the lair disappears. They can't even remember what it looked like. They have to try and find their way out. In both timelines, the adults dealing with the collapse of Derry literally above their heads, like we're talking about the roads and flooding, and like it is the apocalypse. So much so, it's so mimicking of the apocalypse that happens when Flag is coming down in Eyes of the Dragon. Like, there's even a church steeple that collapses. Big ass storm, church steeple comes down, and then the world is just collapsing because it is dead and it is Derry.
Yeah.
That brings us to where the garbage scene happens with the children. And if you would like to not hear this, I will just record this bit when you are gone.
Yeah, should I?
No, I mean, like, when you are not in town anymore.
Yeah.
I can just record so we can keep going here.
Yeah.
I will just record it later.
I think that's probably best.
Cool.
I think I'm okay with that.
All right, then.
Sorry, everybody. You won't have my witticisms, but you will have cats. So, but it's just
to know that it was not okay. I don't know what they necessarily believed about certain things in 1985 or 79 to 85, whenever the fuck this shit was all written. Doesn't matter. This did not need to be in this book. I really, really disapprove of it still being in there. We can edit this out now. I have told Taryn and my therapist that I believe I could take a copy of this book and chop it up and make like it better by just cutting out some of the garbage, including this fucking scene.
And I've deeply encouraged her to try it.
Yeah,
do it.
I might.
I think as long as you don't sell it, as long as you keep it as like fan fiction, you're good.
Yeah, it's my abridged version.
Abridged fan fiction.
Ooh. Trigger warning: if you would like to skip any content related to the controversial scene in It among the 11-year-old losers, please skip to 27 minutes now. I will not be going into extreme detail, but please take care of yourselves and skip if you do not want to even be near the content of the controversial scene of It. The following is going to go over a sexual scene in very brief, just disgustingly brief detail that occurs in 1958 amongst the 11-year-old losers. Basically what happens is the kids are lost and they're struggling to find their way out of the sewers. The idea is that they are out of sync. This means that they need to reconnect themselves as a means to reconnect them so that Eddie's mind compass will work and the kids can continue to work together as a group. Bev comes to the conclusion that they need to have sex with her. It will make them all feel connected again. It is something she believes that is the idea that her piece of shit father has given her. She also remembers her father through this scene a lot. The boys are scared, and the first four don't really seem to understand what is happening. The boys do as Bev instructs, though, and even though she's not even certain what she is expecting, she feels like they'll all know when it does happen. There's also, of course, a reference to how children call sex it and how it is scary. When we get to Ben, he is also reluctant as the other 4 boys had been, but he is the first to ejaculate and the first that Bev seemed to be more present for. Last is Bill. He also ejaculates, and Bev also seems present for that as well. Bill is the one who, when going to Bev, he actually understands what the goal is. Ben he knew what was happening, but he didn't seem to see how this was going to solve their problem. Bill, on the other hand, is aware of, what Bev's, intention is here. This scene was really, really hard to read. I nearly stopped myself, and frankly, it put a bad taste in my mouth for the remainder of the book. I really just wanted it over with. It felt very exploitative of Bev's issues, and as though she was being used to fix the boys' brains. I can't blame anybody for not making it through this. Like I said, I nearly stopped. I legitimately have no idea how the fuck I finished reading this garbage. It's done. It's over. I would say conclusively this could have been cut. I think that there were better ways to achieve the concept of reconnecting. I understand that physical intimacy is often viewed as a way to connect, and I imagine especially in 85 that was the go-to thought is that this is something that makes people feel close to one another. It's hard reading this in the 2020s with everything that we know now. With all the experiences that we all have, the people who have been exposed as being predatory and how much predatory behavior is just found to be acceptable. I feel awful for Bev. I feel awful for all those kids. I realize they're fictional, but this was pretty awful, and I'm glad to be done with it. Bottom line, scene was unnecessary, logic behind it was weak. The core of it, just for the sake of us being able to at least talk, was about connecting and get everybody back in sync.
There's so many other ways.
And that was where I legitimately wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get through it. I struggled reading that. Just so no shame. No shame. Eventually, both sets escape the sewers. Audra is collected from its lair. They did try and take Eddie, but they gave up very quickly on carrying Eddie out. This is where we get into the very weak ending of this book. Because, first of all, the scene does kind of sour my mood for reading the rest of it, because it's just very off-putting. But the ending of this book is not the strongest it could have been. And I do feel like the random abruptness of certain things indicate that. Bev literally sitting down when Eddie dies and putting his head in her lap, and that's just where she stops. What the fuck? Why was that? I don't really remember all of the ending fight with it because this was so stupid. And another part is at first they're okay, yeah, let's try and carry Eddie. But they end up coming up to one thing and they go, well, we have to leave Eddie here. And everybody just goes, okay, bop. It's you're not even I know you're concerned about your safety. You're also not at all seeming like you're concerned about the fact that you're about to abandon your friend's body in a sewers where he's never going to be found. The same as all the other bodies were never fucking found.
Yeah.
Because everything's also collapsing and flooding, and you're not bothered by this. You're really shitty friends. You know what? Eddie said there's no such thing as good or bad friends, and this is why. You're just people that he was around. Fuck all of you. Anyways, so they do manage to keep carrying Audra out. She is completely catatonic, but, they have her. They get her to the hospital. Mike is still there recovering. Eventually, everyone starts to depart Derry. And as they leave Derry, they begin forgetting everything again. Bev goes off with Ben, and frankly, the groundwork for them and their whatever relationship that may have come from that wasn't there. It wasn't in this book. Those two never really connected. All that happened was Ben inviting her back to Nebraska or wherever with him. And that's it. There is no fucking foundation for them being a couple. I don't know that they are. I'm assuming that they are because there's like this implication of like, well, if they're not there by the time they make it to Nebraska, they will be not long after, is like Mike's thoughts about it. And it's like, why? What makes you believe that? Adult Bev has expressed zero interest in adult Ben.
Well, because it's a man and a woman and he's rich. I don't know. But doesn't she have a job?
She's a fashion designer, so I imagine she can do it wherever she wants. And I think eventually the plan is to, like, go back to Chicago or where the fuck she is.
I think that might be more of it, because he could, like, flies all over the place.
Yeah.
But I just imagine, like, that is how little that storyline was kept up on.
Yeah.
She has an entire career, and it's just not
Yeah.
brought up again.
They vaguely mention about, like, Kay being the one who revealed to Tom where Bev was because she was beaten. But you know what? There's not even much acknowledgement to that either. And maybe it's because this is, like, what Mike is writing in his diary. I don't know. In his, like, final, like, chapters. And I call it that because he's not going to finish that history book because he's forgetting too now. Bill and Audra stay the longest because obviously Audra is still catatonic. If you're wondering how is that going to be resolved, prepare to be disappointed because Mike says to Bill as he is still recovering from his near-death experience with Henry, says to Bill, why don't you guys like stay at my place for a little bit, see if maybe you can bring her back. Bill says okay. And so he takes Audra to Mike's house. They basically crash there like an Airbnb. Mike's getting ready to be released, and he's talking to Bill regularly enough. He's also tried calling Richie. He's admitting through his final interlude that, yeah, he's forgetting things, like they can't remember what Stan's last name was. Yeah, they're losing everything. They're forgetting each other. They're forgetting every fucking thing. Richie says, well, you should come out and visit. And Mike says, yeah, I'll do that. I think the very clear indication of that it's not going to happen. They're not going to remember each other after this phone call because Richie, even when it comes to it, he said that because Mike had started recording on the phone, on the answering machine. He almost didn't answer because he couldn't figure out who it was. And that is the degree to which we are just forgetting everything that happened. Bill still remembers anything because he's still technically in Derry, but he is also starting to forget some of the things, like, who is and what they were there for, what they did. It's all just gone. Bill and Audra are at Mike's house. Bill's like, I have this idea, but I don't know if it'll work. So when Mike is like, okay, dude, I'm coming home tomorrow. Bill's like, okay, we'll be out of here. I'm gonna try my idea now. I'm waiting till like the last fucking minute to do it. Don't know why. He enacts his plan, and his plan is to take Silver, tires all pumped up and get it all good to go, and put his catatonic wife on there, just holding on to him, and ride Silver. And he gets very into it. He damn near gets them killed a couple of times because he is an old man riding real fast on this bike. But he is remembering what the skateboard kid said to him about, like, you can't be, like, safe on a skateboard or some shit. For most of the ride, Audra is still just catatonic, but she's starting to do things like squeeze onto him more. And eventually she comes out of it. That's the end. That's the end of the book.
I made a really good decision not finishing it. That's I understand that it's that can't be literal. I understand that cannot be literal. It can't be. How could it be? I
have now broken Taryn. Now there were some fire quotes in this. I will say that.
You can't follow. That needed to come first.
No, it didn't. I needed to get this out of me. Okay? I had to get this out of me. It ends with them all fucking forgetting goddamn everything. Ben and Bev, you remember each other?
Get to.
I know, that's what's scarring. I do need to know, do Ben and Bev remember each other, or did they finally, like, were they traveling and going, who the fuck are you?
That's what I was wondering.
Silver reignites Bill's, like, imagining. Maybe Audra's not even, like, still, like, really there. I don't know. Because honestly, Bill, during his Silver ride at the end, he'd finally, like, been like, okay, well, even if she doesn't come back, I'm enjoying this ride. So he'd already given up on his wife. Man, that was a bad book.
Yeah, it has to be some figurative bullshit, or like a metaphor for like him letting go, and he's letting go of her, and because there's no way that this catatonic woman is allowed to just be in a private home and isn't in a hospital or some shit.
This catatonic famous woman.
Exactly. Like it has to be it's just not and the fact that he gets all these close calls and all this shit, and then they're all forgetting, like, he revisits his childhood and then faces down his fears from his childhood, but then he has to start letting go of all of it. Like, it's just it's not 100%, it's not literal. It can't be literal. But I can see why the movie makes such a joke about endings being the worst.
Yes.
Because that's fucking terrible.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad he roasted himself on that one. He deserved it.
He didn't know where he was going.
He did not. He had no idea how to end that book. This book. This trash.
I think it was like the happiest ending that he could think to give it.
I mean, frankly, there was so little done between Bev and Ben. He could have just given him Bev, killed off Audra and given him Bev.
I don't think audiences would have.
I don't think they would have either.
Like, because he made Audra so much like Bev. If Audra hadn't just been Beverly the way that she was, maybe that would have gone over. But the fact that he basically married Beverly, if he had killed Audra, and then he was like, well, cool, I get to be with the person I wanted to be with, and that I cheated on my wife with, like, it just wouldn't have.
Yeah.
He would have had to write all of that differently.
Yeah. Well, one of the really nice parts of this book was basically, I mean, it is dealing with some of your childhood traumas, which is why when Eddie is, like, in some of his fight scenes, he ends up seeing, like, his mother's face, and we know what she did to him. But also, at one point, Bill is being presented with George, and George is telling him, like, it's your fault that I died. And Bill finally just says, no, George knows I didn't mean for him to die. My folks were wrong. They took it out on me, and that was wrong. Because yes, it fucking was.
Hell yeah.
You're a piece of shit, Bill, but you're learning. Go to therapy. Oh, also, the ritual at Chud is whatever they believe it to be. When Eddie had drawn his aspirator, he looked like a crazed, malnourished gunslinger with some weird pistol.
Sick.
Yeah. So it describes itself as eternal and the eater of worlds. It does start trying to make a deal with adult Bill, because it's like, no, you're going to fucking kill me. But if you don't, I'll make you a god. Don't you want that? When talking to Bill in the, like, deadlight space, it says that space is eternity. It's eternity. And that Bill is currently lost in it, lost forever, never to find your way back. You are eternal now and condemned to wander in the black after you meet me face to face, that is.
Huh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still caught up on the eater of worlds thing, because imagine being like, normally I eat worlds, but kids are easier. Like,
A world of imagination.
I don't like that you were immediate, like, back with that. Like, no, I've thought about this.
I had to read this. But yeah, so the turtle, like, pops out when they're in this space, because the turtle's occupying this, like, same space. It's just, like, gone into its shell. That's why, like, it thought it was dead. But really, it had just, like, gone into its shell. As adults, it does sound like the turtle was, in fact, dead. But, like, spiritually kind of there. Because, like, it has, like, a Force Ghost moment, but then it's gone. And it's, like, even saying, like, okay, I gotta go now, bye. The turtle being amazing, is asked by Bill, what are you? I'm the turtle, son. I made the universe, but please don't blame me for it. I had a bellyache. See? How can you be mad at that? Bill begs for help, and the turtle says, I take no stand in these matters. And Bill starts to say, my brother, to which the turtle responds with, has his own place in the macroverse. Energy is eternal, and even as a child such as yourself must understand. And it and the turtle always refer to it as the macroverse. And yes, there is another out there. It is Bill knows it's there, it knows it's there, and it is not the turtle that is like this other presence that it is already sensing. Even though like it thought the turtle was dead, there is some other thing, and that thing is beyond the void, basically. That other thing might be the creator of the turtle, and it's a force beyond the universe. And in here it is described that the turtle only watches and it only eats. But the other was a force beyond the universe, a power beyond all other power, the author of all there was. And Bill's superpower for dealing with it is to repeat the line that he had to from the speech therapy courses. That's why randomly we would get parts where Bill is having inserted into his sections it beats its fists against the post and still insists it sees the ghost. Because that's what he has to do, essentially, is talk. After the turtle is dead, whatever that other, like, entity is, does say to Bill, son, you did real good.
There's almost a theme of them each having to face, like, a fear.
Absolutely.
To get through it.
Can confirm.
But at the same time, it doesn't quite make it through either, it feels like.
No, I agree. It's so poorly executed at times, and that's the problem. Like, there's these scenes where it's like, oh man, this was super well thought out, but you didn't know how to get here.
Yeah, because obviously, okay, so Bill's fear is speaking, it's public speaking. Bev's fear is sex, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
We've got Stan's fear is death.
I think it is. I really do think to some extent he's afraid of dying, because that's why he wants to stay out of it so much. And it is mentioned when they're kids and they're talking about, like, you know, we gotta come back, and it's Stan specifically who is the one who actually picks up the Coke bottle and says, like, we're gonna come back and we're gonna do this, and he starts the blood circle. So
maybe his fear was going back, or
but there is a point where they're talking about coming back, and Stan has this, like, hesitation moment. Yeah. And because he does have the shine, and he always kind of had this, like, almost like future vision. That's why he was able to build his business the way that he was, and knew, like, no, we're going to be fine. I think he knew. Yeah. He knew what was coming for him.
Eddie's fear is also death. Because it's not really quite germs. Maybe it's pain.
I feel like it's almost something like a fear of not being sick. Because he takes it so hard when he learns, like, no, my mom is maybe exaggerating some of the stuff that she wants me to, like, deal with.
Maybe a fear of being alone. More like. But then what's Richie's fear? Is it also... and this is where you run into the issue, because what's Ben's fear is... Because Ben's fear is also... It's kind of Bev finding out how he feels, but that doesn't seem like it really happens until after. Because she does find out, because she says, like, oh, you wrote the poem. Yeah. But nothing really comes of it. But, I mean, she does find out before everything goes down, and she doesn't reject him. But it is also after he's not a little fat boy anymore. Yeah. So it's not... But they do have to each... Like... They face something, but it's just... It feels like something that's not fully realized.
I agree. I think that's a lot of it. Because it's interesting with that. Like, it's finally explained why Mike keeps getting attacked by birds. Apparently, when he was a baby, his mom was hanging clothes, like laundry, on the line. And she starts hearing him scream, goes inside, and he's being attacked by a crow. So, and it's explained like this little sliver of a memory Mike remembers. That's why it feeds on the memory of a bird attacking him. Because even if he doesn't consciously remember being attacked by a bird as an infant, a part of his brain does, and that part is the part that gets afraid of the birds.
Yeah. And Mike, I forgot all about Mike, but that was going to be, is that his fear, not remembering, forgetting, not being in the moment when he's needed with everyone else, and that's why he's in the hospital and not there with everyone. He can't protect. Yeah. He can't Like, he's not there when needed. They all have to face all of these things. But that's the best that I can get to, and I can't really get to one for everybody. Not quite. It's like at the edge of...
No matter what, there's also the theme of, like, the fear of growing up.
Yeah.
Growing up in general, and it's what's being forced upon them. When you have to start recognizing that, like, children die and things like that, and that someone might want to hurt you. Because when you're a kid, like, we've talked about the stupid ass shit we've done, and, you know, playing in places we weren't supposed to play that were very unsafe. But it's like this moment where eventually a switch turns and you're like, oh, that's why, like, you have to go limp if you fall, because children don't tense like adults do. That's why their bones are, like, spongy. Yeah. But an adult's going to break their arm on something that a kid's going to bounce right back from. And that switch is what leads you to, like, do it. And you're going, oh God, now I'm afraid. Which is a whole other factor of, like, the fears of children are so different and less complicated, because it's like, now I'm afraid of forgetting the ibuprofen. You know, that's why I have purse ibuprofen, because I'm going to hurt. Whereas a kid isn't even gonna, the kid is afraid of a clown in the sewers. We are very different problems. I don't want to hurt in this very realistic thing. You don't want to be eaten by a sewer clown that may or may not exist. The wheel keeps on turning. So we're done with it. Our next read is going to be Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. So that it's a short story. I think it's like 100-ish pages long. That'll be up next. We did record Kids on Bikes. You will already know this by this point. You will also already know that the reason that it came out early is because things went very differently than I expected. There will be more Kids on Bikes following this episode. And frankly, I think we deserve it after getting through this fucking book. It's kind of a wrap. You know, I know that obviously you didn't read it, and that's okay. So I don't necessarily expect you to contribute this bit, but if you have thoughts you'd like to kick in from what you did read, please feel free. So previously, we had listed what we believed the losers were in terms of their classes.
Yeah.
I don't remember what they are. I wrote this script while we were watching a really upsetting show, so I didn't look them up, and this is all very rushed, and I'm so sorry. Lobsters, I'm so sorry. Bear with me. Where we would class them now. And my first real change, and you had to remind me what I even put Stan as, which was previously Force Ghost. Stan, hardcore druid. His bird knowledge really, like, came in clutch. He identifies that it is female, and I'm all here for Stan as the druid, the powerful druid. Bill, I believe you had gone cleric because of, like, what was available at the time.
Yeah.
I think I gotta stick with a paladin. I know that was...
Yeah,
like,
I think...
I just, even if it wasn't what was options there, he is such a paladin because he's more of a, like, icon to the other kids. He doesn't do much of anything but kind of be there, and he's just their leader. Yeah. He is just the person that they turn to as adults when Eddie is dead and they don't have a mind compass to get them out of the sewers. They're all looking at Bill going like, Bill, you gotta help us. How do we get out of here? You have to do it now. Yeah. Because our mind compass is dead. And that is Bill's role.
From everything that I, like, read, paladin was just something that branched out of cleric. If it had been available at the time, I think you're hands down right. And I think I said that before, too. Yeah. I kind of knee-jerk gone with paladin as well. Yeah. I think I would stick with cleric only because if we're going with the idea that considering there was a fucking beholder, I think it's pretty safe to say Stephen King knew. He mapped it out like a fucking dungeon.
He did, and it's such a dungeon.
He knew what he was doing.
He did.
I think that he may have meant for that, but if we're just going off of what's available now, paladin. Like he's a paladin. He's 100% a paladin. Stan's harder, because we only have him as a kid. Mm-hmm. Druid is probably fine. I think it's hard. I think if we can class multiple people into the same thing.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Fine, druid. But if we can't, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I do think that they probably have some possible duplicates. I'm not saying like they have one of every like class. So Bev, I think I'm gonna probably just stick with Ranger here. I think I have multi-classed her Barbarian Ranger, and as a kid, I think she very much like met that quality. But especially as an adult, when she kind of she literally just stops.
Yeah.
It's nothing against Rangers. I think she was very good at like getting them to a certain point. But then she just ran out of everything. So it's also very difficult with her to say she's anything because she kind of disappears. Ben is still an artificer.
Yeah.
He builds shit. That's what he do. Richie's still a bard. No doubts.
Yeah.
Hardcore bard. Mike is a wizard to me. Him and his books.
Yeah, I could go that way. I think Mike was the other one that I'm like maybe a druid as well.
You did, I believe, multi-class him as a wizard. Especially because like druid had originally, you had to get to a certain level, I think, in wizard to become a druid.
Yeah. So I think that's the one where I'm like, well, if you can do both. But Stan is the other one that I'm like, I don't know, I could almost say wizard. So I think because there's so much crossover with the two, and one is just more religious, I feel like, than the other.
Yeah.
I could see where you're coming from, though, where it's just, I think, especially now that we've seen so much more of adult Mike and seen so much more of what he's done, I have to agree. I think you're right. As someone who tends towards the wizard class, yes, he is one of us.
And then lastly, Eddie. I believe I had previously said cleric, but I had made it clear that I think that was influenced by the movie. I have to say now, Eddie sorcerer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think so.
That is where I'm falling with these guys.
Good way to toss them out. Bev is just really hard.
Bev is really hard. Bev is the one that probably fits the least into any of them.
It's because she just gets so...
She's got one purpose, and it's not a good one.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I think that's a little bit of the problem. She was used as a I don't even want to say plot device because it's not good, but technically I think it was as a plot device. I just don't approve of the plot device that it was.
Yeah.
And we will have It movies coming your way. We do love the 2017 and 2019 movies. I am still upset by how much Eddie and Stan got nerfed. But I am thrilled that adult Mike got to be there for the final fucking fight, and then adult Beverly didn't sit down and just do nothing.
I'm also interested to watch it now with the changes that were made to Richie.
And we get to watch the 80s miniseries with Tim Curry, Seth Green.
I always forget about Seth Green.
Seth Green being Richie.
God, that's gonna
Child Richie.
That's gonna be fucking weird. That's gonna be very weird.
It does.
Seth Green as a child is just going to be weird. Mm-hmm. God, that's why I'm excited to watch the other movies, though, because I remember starting this and being like, man, the movies are just shit now. And then we got deeper in it, and I'm like, no, never mind.
I don't need the book. Don't need the book. And I feel like we're going to get so much shit for this because everybody online always lists it as amongst some of their top Stephen King, and fuck, man, I don't like this. I don't like this book. I like parts of it. I think that there are some just really incredible quotes. And I do see, from what I do know of The Dark Tower, from being your friend for, 80 years, I see how this is a cornerstone. Yeah. That's why the book is so thick. It has to hold up some of the tower.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because there's just things in here it's like, fuck.
I mean, tell us why. Respectfully. Don't do it in a douche way, but tell us why, because we've also just been in this book for so long. Yeah. That maybe there's also resentment at this point because we just want to do anything else.
That's true. We have been reading this book for a long-ass time. I think we got 8 episodes out of this. We've been doing it since the beginning of the fucking year.
Which is, Oh my god, that's so much.
Right?
That's months. That's months and months.
It's months and months. And we also were having to read it kind of, slow so we can talk about it. And we are picking it apart and analyzing it. It's not to say other people aren't doing that, but I failed to see its current qualities, but I failed to see the qualities of Misery until I wasn't in Misery anymore.
Yeah, I do see a pattern emerging where we kind of hate it until we're out of it.
Yeah.
And
I still hate the Mist quite a bit, though.
Yeah, but I won't lie. I went back and re-listened to us talking about it. It was so funny that it made me like it more.
We are pretty fucking funny.
Yeah, that's why we're here. We're great.
Yeah.
So
we can make a joke out of anything.
Almost anything.
Yeah. We won't joke about that.
Yeah, we are Meatloaf-esque in that way.
Would you like to tell them what card we got last time and pull a fresh one?
Wasn't it like the 7 of Pentacles?
It was, yeah.
I don't have anything up to tell me. I just remembered.
The 7 of Pentacles is talking about planting seeds for the future and watching things like come to fruition.
That's right. And there was the one that was off of the bushes that was away from all the other ones.
Yeah.
I remember. I remember.
At the very least, in Stephen King world, it is talismanic. 7.
Shit.
So let's see what we get this week.
All right.
Oh, God.
Did the deck get shuffled?
It did. What the fuck? I shuffled the crap out of it multiple times.
So I pulled the 7 of Pentacles.
Like, I even, restacked it and shuffled it again. How the fuck? Because
I know that I put it back on the top.
I know. I purposely saw it. So I slipped it, and then I shuffled.
I mean, that's why I asked.
Ka is a wheel.
You can go back to my description from last week if you want to know what the card looks like. Because I'm not doing it again. This is like the 3rd time we've pulled this card.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, we are planting seeds for the future. I just talked about this being a cornerstone of Dark Tower shit.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
I'm not making the same face this time. I mean, we've pulled the same card before, but never like this.
No, I mean, we had that, Chariot run? Was it Chariot? Or Temperance. That Temperance run.
He's wearing, 2 different boots.
I mean, sometimes you gotta get out of the house and you don't pay attention to what's going on your feet. Maybe his feet are also 2 different sizes. That's pretty common.
Like he's standing with 1 foot in, water or something.
Let's see.
Yeah. I've never noticed it before. And I guess I'm assuming it's a dude. It could be... It just looks dudish.
I think they try to make a lot of them very, androgynous so that you, whatever's feeling there.
It's the clothes.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
That
Just saying.
Mannish.
I think that's why sometimes they, back off on making it super duper clear.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe the deck just knows how done we are, so that way we don't have to go through, the whole description and...
Instead, we're just stunned, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I shuffled it so many times, I swear.
Really wants us to know 7 of Pentacles. We can pull another one.
No, I'm good. I'm good if you want to just...
Yeah. Well, I'd say to go find other worlds, but apparently we're just real interested in 7 of Pentacles around here, so...
Yeah.
Fine, you do them.
You can email us at miniconstantworlds@gmail.com, DM us on Instagram or TikTok, and hey, while you're there, maybe give us a follow. Love you, lobsters.